More people are watching sports on illegal streams in the UK. The number of illegal streams of sports events has more than doubled to 3.6 billion in the past 3 years. This research is from the Campaign for Fairer Gambling. Their interest being is that for reasons that we'll explain shortly, that you'll hear shortly, how it's leading to problem gambling. I spoke to Matt Zarb-Cousin from the Campaign for Fairer Gambling and Ismail Vali from the online security platform YieldSec, which carried out this research. Here's Ismail explaining exactly what constitutes the black market here.
There's a total marketplace, which is made up of a legal sector and an illegal sector. What is illegal online streaming? It's any streaming service that's not authorized, licensed, or otherwise permitted under the laws of a jurisdiction, in this case, the United Kingdom, or by the relevant content rights holders, Premier League, for example, okay? But that streaming content is targeting, accessible to, and delivering content to consumers in the United Kingdom, whether it's provided free of charge or in exchange for payment, advertising, or other forms of commercial benefit. So nothing that's being stolen in content terms to be reparlayed onto consumers, none of that stuff is free, okay? The streaming business, the illegal streaming business, makes its money how? Predominantly through advertising. And who is the predominant advertiser? On 89% of the advertising, it's illegal gambling.
I understand that. What I don't understand is if you know who's streaming and what they're streaming and where they are, if not actual names, then why aren't the rights holders must be able to know now? So why, setting aside questions on gambling, they'd want to protect what they've bought. So why aren't they putting a stop to it? And why aren't the leagues themselves, let's say the Premier League, why aren't the Premier League clamping down on it? Because if everyone can just find a way of streaming it illegally, in the end, then they're not going to get, they're not going to be able to sell subscriptions.
Exactly. So that's a really great question, okay? And we always understand this. Everybody's looking to pass the buck in this, the same way that they are in illegal gambling. So legal, licensed gambling companies will say, we're making less and less money every year, as they are in the UK. How do we make more money? It's the regulator's fault. They need to do something about it. Streaming companies and all the sports teams and leagues who are selling their rights, they're getting less and less viewers, less and less subscribers to things like Sky TV. How do we do something about it? They can't point to a regulator apart from really Ofcom. So there's nobody particularly looking after them, and each company needs to look after their own backyard. So for every set of rights, somebody's got a legal team and a cease and desist process and all this stuff going on. Very few people, if anybody, I think globally, have done what YieldSec and GCI did, which is to look at the entire marketplace and say, this is what's going on. You have a horribly burning fire in that area of content rights, and people are not streaming because what's happening globally is more and more sports are charging more and more money across more and more streaming platforms. In the US, for example, the NFL is basically requires 8 separate streaming accounts and an outlay of about $2,000 a year for you to watch the NFL from preseason through to Super Bowl. Okay, the same thing is happening in the Premier League. The same thing is happening on darts.
I understand. So that they are powerless to stop it, and
well, not necessarily powerless. What it is basically people aren't working together. So the biggest thing that we do is coordinate a lot of this activity to say, here's your awareness. Here's what you need in ability terms. You need to know who is stealing from you and how they're selling that content onto other consumers. And this is how you make it stop. But where is that content hosted? So you break this, our model for breaking black markets and illegal gambling, illegal streaming, illegal crypto, you break it through the supply chain, Adrian. You will do nothing going after the Mr. Bigs of illegal online gambling, illegal online streaming, by chasing them in shadow jurisdictions like Curacao, etc. You need to break it through the supply chain locally. So Facebook in the UK, Google in the UK, Instagram in the UK, they're your biggest problem, but they're unknowingly passing that content on because they are also being lied to. So yes, the tech platforms have some blame here, but it's not blame they want. And when you point out to them that, look, your platform is being used to facilitate handling stolen
and you're
goods.
Losing revenue, which is the only language they can understand usually in business, then I don't understand why they're not as hopping mad as you are for slightly different reasons.
Look, we had one example of this where we told an app store, very famous app store, there's only a couple of them in the world, we told them that they had 3,500 illegal apps in their app store, and they were like, no, we don't, that's a lie. When we showed it to them, and it wasn't obviously in the gambling section, the apps were in other sections, but consumers don't go to the gambling storefront, they just look for the app in the search bar. So when we showed them all these apps, they were like, so you're telling us they screwed us too? So they've been stealing money from us as well. That's what made them change really quickly. So you're absolutely correct. This will come down to a dollars and cents piece, which is if everyone's losing money, and everybody from the commerce behind this, the community behind this in tax, and the consumers are also being screwed here too. So everybody loses money apart from crime. Crime is the only one that gets out like a bandit because it is one.
So, Matt, you come at this for your concern about the gambling harm, basically. So, I'm trying to find a workable example that people will recognise, and I genuinely have never looked at an illegal stream. I don't think using a Fire Stick or any of that nonsense. So, if somebody's doing that and thinks, well, I'm not paying all that money, I'll watch this Premier League game, then they might regard that as a victimless crime, but which obviously isn't true. But But how does that lead to gambling harm is what I don't understand.
Sure, yeah. So I think the illegal market will tend to try to target people who are already self-excluded. So people who have already decided they've got an addiction, they want to quit gambling, they will actually market their own platforms, their gambling platforms, as being not part of the self-exclusion scheme. So if people are already signed up to it, they can then obviously gamble with this illegal site. So there's obviously that risk of gambling harm. There's also the fact that these sites, when they're marketing themselves to British consumers, if they do acquire customers, that's basically tantamount to stealing tax revenues from the country. There's obviously that social cost, that economic cost as well. These sites have very few protections. They're very often crypto-based. If you were on Instagram or TikTok and you went and searched for some gambling content and streamers, gambling online, which is obviously quite a popular content theme, you'll very, very quickly be shown by the algorithm streamers that are promoting the illegal gambling sites. And it's very difficult for people to tell the difference sometimes based on the content. And this is why, as Ismail said, the platforms, they do have a responsibility. They do have to step up, I think, and be held accountable for the promotion of this type of content. And I think there's a ways in which you can kind of enforce that through enhanced, due diligence around who the streamers are, who they're advertising, and all that kind of thing. But I think when it comes to the illegal streaming of sporting events, I think the government's response in the UK has been to sort of criminalise consumption and stigmatise people that are kind of using the fire sticks and plant stories in the media about the police kind of arresting people for using fire sticks. As Ismail said, we have to go further up the chain. We have to target the people that are providing this type of content, and go disrupt the supply chains, disrupt the promotion of it through Google, through social media platforms, which is how people see it eventually. Ultimately, they have to be able to find the content in order to access it. And if you can stop them finding the content, then obviously you deal with most of the problem.
Adrian, your question was around gambling harm, and just to kind of really clarify this clearly. So on the gambling harm piece, there's obviously illegal gambling that is targeting vulnerable communities in the United Kingdom. And that's where, for the last 5 years, it has made money. Okay. So illegal gambling did not come to the UK looking to compete with the likes of Ladbrokes, William Hill and Paddy Power. You would need to spend a minimum of £10,000 a week just on your Google advertising to appear on page 20, of Google. So no illegal gambling company wants to spend that kind of money. They want to make money by spending the least to make the most. Illegal gambling came to the UK and went, what's an audience we can get in the world's most lucrative gambling marketplace on a per customer basis? So we have the richest gambling customers in the world, for online gaming. Illegal gambling came and went, we want two audiences, children and self-excludes. 1% of the UK population is now on the GamStop scheme. So they have restricted themselves from gambling with any legal online gambling company. What is left for them then, when you do not police the internet for that GamStop piece, when you provide this gaming reservation for the most vulnerable people in the gambling chain, basically, illegal gambling came there and said, how about you guys look for not on GamStop, which they saw the audience was looking for. They have an itch that they can't help but scratch sometimes because they are self-admitted problem gamblers. They then found the not on GamStop phenomenon, and it grew and grew, doubled in size every year. On the illegal streaming piece, what's dangerous is this. That audience were weaponized through illegal streaming. So they found that by watching illegally streamed Premier League games, they found nothing but advertising for illegal gambling. And then their addiction just kind of opened up. The other piece of this is the malware and spyware. So behind all illegal streaming of sports in the UK, behind 89% of the streaming, whether you're a self-restricted customer or not, behind 89% of the streams on sports illegally, there is malware, spyware, keystroke loggers.
And that's not going to end well. I mean, we understand that. So, Matt, what I've always assumed will happen, watching the cost of watching football and other sports rise and being hidden behind paywalls, partly because it's so expensive and you need so many different, subscriptions now. I'd assume the whole thing would go the same way as music streaming, which, piracy became such an issue that the legitimate streamers just had to drop their prices to make it even free, to make it more accessible. So why is that not happening? Why is that not happening with sports rights and sports subscriptions and so on?
I think actually British consumers get a bit of a raw deal compared to internationally when it comes to football rights, where we've got to have a subscription to Sky, to TNT, to Amazon. There's just so many different subscriptions you've got to have if you want to watch all the games now. And there has been obviously talk about the clubs actually owning the rights and having their own streaming platform. But even if you had a very affordable streaming service where you could watch all the games, if you still had the 3 p.m. blackout, then people are going to still stream the 3 o'clock kickoffs. So I think that's a problem that needs to be looked at as well. If people going for the trying to watch the 3 o'clock kickoffs are ending up seeing illegal gambling content and getting viruses on their computers and all that kind of stuff, surely we can come up with a better solution for that still protects the lower leagues. Fascinating
stuff there. That was Matt Zarb-Cousin of the Campaign for Fairer Gambling, and Ismail Vali from YieldSec.